It is 2:14 in the morning, and something has woken you. Not a dream, a sound. Down the hall, or down the stairs. You were asleep, so you cannot say, and already you are trying to replay a thing you were not awake for. Beside you, your wife lifts her head off the pillow and says, low, "Did you hear that?" Your hand is already going to the nightstand. Hold it right there, because before you close your fingers on anything, I need you to understand what that object is about to do inside this house. A rifle fired in that hallway puts you next to roughly 160 decibels. The Centers for Disease Control puts firearms between 140 and 175, with most of what a man owns landing between 150 and 165. The federal safety line, the point where a single exposure, one time, permanently destroys hearing, is 140. Not a career on a range, once. And that scale does not climb by adding, it multiplies. 160 decibels is not twice as loud as 80. It is on the order of 100 million times the pressure. So finish the picture. You press that trigger, and inside a quarter second, three things happen together. The round goes where it goes. Your hearing may be gone for the rest of your life. And the flash, a white detonation 18 inches from your face in a pitch-dark house, takes your eyes. The man who wins that fight can finish it deaf and blind in his own hallway with his family somewhere in the dark around him. I have watched a lot of men walk you through their nightstand on camera. Handgun with a light and a laser, short rifle with a suppressor, safe, charging pad. And most of them had thought about it harder than most. But every time I sat waiting for one item, and it never came. It was not on the nightstand. It could not have been. I am holding that back until the end, and not to be clever. Say it now, and you will nod and think you already knew. The reasons are the whole thing. So let us go through what is actually on that table, starting with the gun, and starting with the man whose hands are about to be on it. In January of 2006, researchers led out of the University of Colorado published a finding in the Journal of the American Medical Association. They tested people's thinking immediately after waking them from a full, sound 8 hours. Then they compared it against those same people after more than 24 hours awake. The freshly woken scores were worse. And a day without sleep, by earlier work, impairs a man about the way alcohol does. They call it sleep inertia. Worst in the first 10 minutes, and worst of all when you are woken during the biological night, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Now translate that out of the laboratory and onto a gun, because that is where it actually lives. Fine motor control is the first thing that goes. Not strength, you will have plenty of grip. Precision. So the safety that your thumb sweeps without thought on a Saturday afternoon is a small lever on a dark object at 2 in the morning, and men have stood there pressing a dead trigger over and over on a gun they have owned for years. A magazine release, a slide stop, a bolt release, a manual safety, every single one of those is a fine motor task, and every one of them gets worse in the dark, worse with adrenaline, and worse at that hour. Which is why the number of manipulations on your bedside gun matters more than its caliber. A gun with fewer things to operate is a better gun at 214 than a better gun with more. And your grip changes. Under a real adrenaline dump, a man crushes the gun. The whole hand clamps, the trigger finger comes along with it, and the press that was smooth on Saturday becomes a snatch. That is not a character flaw. That is your nervous system doing what it is built to do. The only thing that pushes back on it is repetition deep enough that the motion happens below thinking. Now the gun itself, and I want to start with the part nobody at the counter mentions, the barrel. Everybody wants the short one. It is handy, it turns in a hallway, it looks serious. But barrel length is not free, and the bill comes due in exactly the two ways that matter in a bedroom. A cartridge is a measured amount of powder burning to push a bullet. In a long barrel, most of that powder finishes burning inside the tube. Cut the barrel down, and it does not. A meaningful portion of it is still burning when it exits the muzzle, and it finishes burning out there in the open air right in front of your face. That is what a fireball is. That is why a short rifle produces a flash you can genuinely see in daylight and a blast that is dramatically harsher than the same cartridge out of a longer tube. Same round, same powder, different amount of it going off outside the gun instead of inside it. So the handiest gun in your house is very often the loudest and the brightest one in it, and both of those things are being paid for by your ears and your eyes in a hallway you have to keep functioning in. The little carbine that everybody wants for exactly this job is, in that one specific respect, the worst tool on the rack. Now, sights, which is where dark houses embarrass people. Your eyes have been lying in a dark room for hours, and that is the best they get. Rods need 20 to 30 minutes in darkness to come up and longer to reach their best, so at 2:14 you can see more of your own house than at any other point of that night. Flip the bedside lamp and it is gone. Look at your phone and most of it is gone. Fire one round and all of it is gone, with a white blotch floating in the middle of everything. Here is what that does to iron sights. Irons require you to stack three things: rear notch, front post, target, in one line, and the eye can only focus sharply on one of them. In daylight, you cheat by focusing hard on the front sight. In a dark hallway, there is no front sight to focus on. It is a black post against a black room. Plain irons on a bedside gun are, in practical terms, not sights at all after dark, which is why tritium inserts and why a red dot exist. A dot solves a different problem than most men realize. It is not about magnification, and it is not about being modern. A dot sits on one focal plane. You look at the threat in the world with your eyes where they naturally want to be, and the aiming reference is simply out there floating on it. There is no stacking. There is nothing to align. A groggy man cannot align three planes. He can put a dot on a thing. The honest caveat: a dot is a battery and a lens, and either can fail, and men with astigmatism often see a smeared star instead of a dot and have to hunt for a model that works for their eye. Turn the brightness down for a dark house. A dot cranked to daylight settings will bloom into a fat glare and wash out the very thing you are trying to identify. Which brings us to the light, and here I part with a good deal of what gets sold. You need one because of the fourth rule, and the four rules do not soften at 2 in the morning. Every gun is always loaded. Never let the muzzle cover anything you are not willing to destroy. Finger off the trigger until the sights are on the target and you have decided to fire. Know your target and what lies beyond it. A shape is not a target. A sound is not a target. But look at what a light bolted to the gun actually means. If that is the only light you own, then every time you want to know what something is, you point a muzzle at it to find out. Rule 2 and Rule 4 end up in a fist fight every time in your own hallway. So let us be honest about who is standing in that hallway. It is your daughter. She is 19, she came in at 2, and she carried her shoes from the door so she would not wake you, which is exactly the quiet, careful, guilty movement in a dark house that sounds like a man who does not belong there. That is what you heard. Keep a light on the gun if you like, but the first light your hand finds ought to be the one you can put on your own daughter without pointing anything at her. Now ammunition, which decides more here than the gun does. Start with buckshot because there is a myth about it that has put men in prison. A standard 2 3/4-inch double-aught load holds 9 pellets, each about 33/100ths of an inch across. Men hear that and conclude a shotgun does not need aiming, that you point it and the room does the work. A rough figure for an open bore is about an inch of spread per yard. Across a hallway, 7 yards. That is a pattern you could cover with your fist. You aim that gun exactly like a rifle, and the pellets that miss do not stop. They keep going into the next room, and the law will treat every one as a decision you made. Then expansion. A hollow point is not about power. It is about a bullet opening up so it dumps its energy inside what it hit instead of carrying it out the far side into your house. That is the whole design intent, and it is the single most useful thing about defensive ammunition indoors. And here is the one that runs straight against the counter. Ask a room which is safer to fire inside a house, pistol or rifle, and nearly all say pistol because the rifle is more powerful. But interior walls are drywall and air. They stop essentially nothing, not a pistol bullet, not a buckshot pellet. And when people have shot rounds through stacked wall sections, the light, fast rifle bullets do something the heavy, slow pistol bullets do not. They come apart. A thin-jacketed rifle round hitting a wall at speed tends to fragment and dump its energy, while a pistol bullet sails through wall after wall in one piece, still lethal on the other side. More powerful, and in that specific sense, less likely to reach the room where somebody is sleeping. Intuition gets that exactly backwards. Last thing on the table, and it is the storage question. If there are children in your house, the gun is locked. There is no version where that is not true. A child's curiosity is a certainty, an intruder is a maybe, and you do not trade a certainty for a maybe. Any man who says he has hidden it well enough has forgotten what he was like at 9. So accept the seconds a lock costs and make them few. A small box in arm's reach beats a big safe across the room. And a lock you have not opened in the dark, eyes shut, enough times that your hand does it without you, is not a lock you own yet. Practice it on an ordinary Tuesday. It takes 4 minutes and nobody does it. And there is a question inside that box that men argue about endlessly and usually settle wrong: whether the gun in it is loaded with a round in the chamber. Understand what the alternative asks of you. Racking a slide or working a bolt is a two-handed job. One hand holds, one hand pulls. Both hands work against a spring. Now put that at 2:14 in the morning, in the dark, with fine motor control already degraded, possibly with a light in one hand. Men short-stroke that motion on a range in broad daylight with both hands free and nothing at stake. The most common way a defensive gun fails is not mechanical. It is a man who never got it running. So the gun in that box should be ready, and the thing making it safe should be the lock on the box and nothing else. That is the whole reason the lock exists. A gun stored unloaded in a locked box has been made safe twice and useful 0 times. The exception is a man who genuinely cannot keep it locked. If your circumstances mean the gun sits loose, then you accept a slower gun in exchange, because a certainty outranks a maybe every time. But do not tell yourself an empty chamber is a substitute for a lock. It is not. It is only a slower gun that a child can still load. Notice what that quietly tells you, too. If your plan is open a box, find a light, then move through a house, that is 3 fine motor jobs handed to a man performing worse than a drunk. All right, here it is. The most important thing beside my bed is not on the nightstand and never was. It is a decision I made months ago, in daylight, awake and unhurried and in my right mind. I am not leaving this room. Not to check the noise, not to sweep the hall, not to see if the back door is standing open. I go to the floor beside the bed with that door locked between me and whatever it is, light in one hand, and I let the night come to one known doorway. If it opens, I am looking at a place I already know, and there is exactly one spot in the world I have to watch. And look at what that decision does to every single problem we just went through. The blast and the flash. I am not firing unless a door I locked comes open at a range I can see. The sights. I have one doorway to cover, not a house full of corners, and I have already had the light in my hand. The fine motor collapse. The gun came out of the box once at the start when I had a moment, instead of being fumbled halfway down a stairwell. The over-penetration. I know what is behind that doorway because I know my own house and I chose the angle in daylight. Every one of those problems shrinks when I stop moving. The man who leaves that room inherits all of them at once. Groggy, one hand on a light, night vision spent, going around corners that belong to whoever is standing behind them. Clearing a building is difficult, specialized work that trained men do in teams, and they still lose people at it. But that is the second reason. Here is the first. Run the night again, only this time you stay. 2:14. You hear it. Your hand closes on the gun and you do not get up. You go to the floor, you lock the door, and you call down that hallway in the biggest voice you own. And what comes back up the stairs is your daughter saying, "Dad, it's me. I'm sorry, I was trying to be quiet." That man never has to live with anything. He goes back to bed, rattled and a little embarrassed, and wakes his family in the morning like it never happened. The other man is somewhere in a dark hallway at that same moment, ears ringing, eyes wrecked, deciding what a shape is. I will not spend long on the law because it changes at every state line and you have heard enough of it. Only this: 2 men tell 2 very different stories afterward, and one of them never left his own bedroom. Read your own statutes and sit with a lawyer in your county. I am a farmer. The honest exception, because there is one. Children in another room changes the arithmetic, and any man who says otherwise has none. But you settle that in daylight too. A plan to gather, a rule that nobody opens a door until they hear your voice. Decided by the clear-headed version of you, because the man inventing a plan at 2:14 is the impaired one, and he will invent a poor one. And notice the cost of that list. The decision is free. The light is cheap. The right ammunition is $20. The gun is the expensive thing on that nightstand, and it is not the thing that decides this. There is a kind of man who hears a noise and wants to go find out, and he thinks that is courage. Gently, it is not. Courage is lying there frightened, wanting badly to go look, and staying exactly where you said you would, because you settled it in the daylight, and because your family is counting on you to be the man who does not shoot his own daughter on the stairs. I pray you never hear anything. Decide it now while you are awake. If this was worth your time, stay with me. There is more to say, and I will say it plainly.